I'm bringing this up again because, we're all pretty much fangirls and boys of Doge, but we're also fans of Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. Now, we also don't have a ton of information, so every time there's something new that comes out, I want to grab a hold of that and present it to all of you. So Musk and Vivek, whom President-elect Trump has tasked with running this Department of Government Efficiency, laid out their vision in the Wall Street Journal, which is nice because their vision is kind of ever evolving. They have more or less a holistic view. But now let's get into the details a little bit. Musk and Ramaswamy said that that the way the government is currently run is anti-democratic and antithetical to the founder's vision. Correct. Thank you. And this is why I said the previous episode, maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago, that it's going to seem kind of like a culture shock to all of us because we're not used to seeing the way things are supposed to be ran. So when finally things go back to normal, it is foreign to us. And the analogy that I always give is we're so used to swiping a credit card nowadays that it's kind of normal in our society and just taking out debt and paying for something that we don't even have the money to pay for, meaning we're borrowing it. Where if you look on early into our culture, extremely frowned upon to sit there and take out credit and pay for something that you don't have money for. Like you borrowing money from somebody was like such a negative view on your whole family, not just you, but your whole family. And now it's just totally acceptable. Now it's a very rough analogy, but you get what I mean, where if we went back to cutting off credit and it became like frowned upon again, it'd be kind of a culture shock for us because we grew up with credit being somewhat okay. Now, the department was created to cut the federal government down to size, they wrote. The entrenched and ever-growing bureaucracy represents an existential threat to our republic, and politicians have abetted it for too long. Now, what's also interesting here is they say that Trump's transition team has hired them to lead a lean team of small government crusaders who will pursue 3 major kinds of reform: regulatory recessions, administrative reductions, and cost savings. So the idea behind this regulatory cuts is to kind of free up the market to allow people to be innovative and kind of do the things they want to do. And that's kind of hindering a lot of people from doing something. And what I find interesting, and I'm going to use the EP as an example here. When I used to audit companies, usually they'll kind of take you around the factory, or if you're kind of new to, if it's a new client for you, maybe it got passed on to you, they'll sit there and kind of show you around. You can ask them questions. And I was auditing this company one time, and they were showing me around the facility, and they had basically these caps that go on top of these funnels. And I'm gonna do a terrible job of explaining it. It's been like over a decade. And he said, because I asked, I was like, what are those things that you're kind of building that goes on top? He goes, well, it helps purify basically the exhaust that comes out of the funnel. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I was like, was that something you guys have always been wanting to do? And he goes, it's something we've always wanted to do, but it's costing us an arm and a leg to expedite it because the government is mandating it through regulations for us to do it. And it's almost crippling our company because they're having to push this out when in the long run, they were working on it and we're going to get to it kind of over time. But now you got to take all your resources and put it into now that one thing to sit there and make sure you're meeting the regulation just to stay afloat and stay in business. And so I always try to use that as an example of companies want to sit there and create. They want to sit there and make things more efficient, whether it's cleaner air, cleaner water, usually something of the sort. And they'll get there. It's just government is now kind of limiting the scope of which not only are they going to grow, but get to the end result that both of them wanted at the end of the day, which would have been, in this case, clean air. So Vivek and Elon wants to clean that up. They also continued saying a drastic reduction in federal regulations provides sound industrial logic for mass headcount reductions across the federal bureaucracy. We have millions of people that don't do anything. A lot of these people don't even show up to work, you guys. Legitimately, multiple days out of the week, don't even show up to work, and you're paying for that. Folks, I'm not even kidding. In SoCal, in Southern California, our gas company, there's a guy that gets paid over $200,000 to not do anything. He like pushes a button. Like $200,000. There's people I know that give tours, they're tour guides of these facilities, government facilities. I'm talking like SoCal Gas and Electric, like electric companies, the governmental electric companies give tours and they're getting paid like $100,000. Let that one sink in. Of your money, $100,000 tour guide. There's a bunch of metal over there. There's a picture of, well, I don't know what that is. That's a toilet. If you flush it, the water goes in circles. $100,000. I mean, hell, can we get a reduction on Karine Jean-Pierre? She sucks. DOGE intends to work with embedded appointees and agencies to identify the minimum number of employees required. There you go. At the agency for it to perform its constitutionally permissible and statutorial mandated functions. It's really tiny and it's morning. The department will work with legal experts and use advanced technology to determine where cuts can be made immediately that they say will liberate individuals and businesses from illicit regulations never passed by Congress and stimulate the U.S. economy. Thank you, God. This all comes down to these people that suck at the government teat and are telling businesses and individuals what they have to do when these people were never elected to do this stuff. Never elected. And they sit there and they're always in their position of authority, regardless of whoever's president. And that's not right. Who the hell elected them? Who put you in charge? Well, some other knucklehead put them in charge, and then they grew, and then the other knucklehead got promoted, and now they're in charge, and they put in another knucklehead, and then now we're bloated government. We don't need all this. Now check this out. Now we're getting into some numbers. Double buckle up. They said that DOGE will aim to gut. Oh my God, look at that number. Feels good. $500 billion in annual federal expenditures every year that are unauthorized by Congress or being used in ways that Congress never intended. From $535 million a year to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and $1.5 billion for grants to international organizations to nearly $300 million to progressive groups like Planned Parenthood. They also advocate for large-scale audits of federal contracts that have gone unexamined, which they argue would yield significant savings to taxpayers. I want to count the fact that we failed 7 consecutive audits. I would like to see some people be fired here and some actual responsibility being taken place in our own government. 7 audits. That's a record. It's a record. Do you know anybody that's failed 7 consecutive audits? I sure in hell and survived. I don't know. I don't think it's happened. I really don't. And somehow our government gets away with it. Can I just explain this for a second? Because some people I think don't know what auditing is. You have a corporation, let's say Google. And Google has a bunch of financial statements that you look at as an investor and go, okay, this is how much they have in cash, accounts receivable, accounts payable, revenue, expenses, right? Goodwill, all this stuff. And you'll, hey, this looks like a pretty good company to invest my hard-earned money into. Well, let me go ahead and invest my money. But here's the thing. That financial that you're reading, some dude like me, when I was an accountant, literally just made them like a Word document or whatever software is being used. Just a Word document. And there's probably some staffer at a low level that's flipped through it in a 3-ring binder to sit there and proofread it and edit it, which we all had to do at some point as accountants or auditors. And they project it to all of you. But how do you know those numbers are legit? How do you know those numbers are real? I could have sat there and fabricated it like that one broad did during the 2020 election by putting in an extra 0, and that's why you got the vertical spike in the election. It was just a clerical error. How do you know it's real? Well, that's why we have auditors to go out and check and sample and see, hey, is there enough materiality? Is there enough level of error in each account that would elicit us to say, hey, you know what? The numbers are kind of so wrong that you're being misled by this financial statement. And that's when we issue them a piece of paper that basically says something like that. And so in the same way, if you know that a company's kind of, I'm not saying willingly being fraudulent, but their employees have made so many errors or they are being fraudulent, that if you knew that was taking place, then you wouldn't invest in that company and things go south really quick. Well, if you have a company like Enron, if we all remember them, the biggest power company in the world decades ago, and it turned out that they were cooking their books and, well, everybody was putting their retirement into that company and all of them lost their retirement. The company crashed. People went to prison. And Arthur Anderson, their auditor from one of the big 8 back then, the biggest accounting firm in the world, was the one that was auditing Enron and cooking the books for them and lying about all this stuff when they were auditing. Well, they lost their integrity and so they crumbled. I gave you that whole example to explain the fact of if you don't have integrity in a corporation to sit there and do something correct and have ethics and morality, then why would you sit there and have faith in your government to run anything correctly when it sat there and gave you the double middle finger, not once, not twice, but 7 times? 7 times? Oh, we didn't just lose like $1 million, which is bad, by the way. Still, it's bad. We didn't just lose $200 million. We're talking almost $1 trillion in consecutive audits. Just gone. Poof. No clue where it went. This was a clip that I shared on my X page probably a couple days ago. But it was nice because when I was going through show prep yesterday, Musk commented on it. And this is an old clip from Milton Friedman talking about government bloat. Now, Milton Friedman has some great books. If you haven't read them, he's an economist. Who was it? Thomas Sowell. Just how great his books are. And Milton Friedman was a professor. He's passed away. He's long gone now, but greatly missed. Thomas Sowell was a Marxist. If anybody knows who Thomas Sowell is, one of my favorite people. Read any of his books. Just type in Thomas Sowell. Read any of his books. You will be way better off for it. Well, he was a Marxist going into Milton Friedman's course, and Milton Friedman is one of the variables that actually helped him become a capitalist, believe it or not. So it's a really interesting trajectory. Well, Elon and fellow billionaire Vivek Ramaswamy are already looking at what parts of the government could be slashed as they team up to lead President-elect's DOGE. Okay, so here is the clip. Let me cue it up. It's kind of long, but I think it's worth it. And these old clips are great because you can really see how things haven't changed all that much. But you're also going to see, even back, God, this must have been the 80s, I want to say, or early 90s, maybe even earlier. Just how bloated government was back then.
14 is a lot for television, so I want to just go right down the list quickly and have you give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. Keep them or abolish them. Department of Agriculture.
Abolish.
Gone. Department of Commerce.
Abolish.
Gone. Department of Defense.
Keep.
Keep it. Department of Education.
Abolish.
Gone. Energy.
Abolish.
Housing.
Except that energy ties in with the military.
Well, then we shove it under defense.
That's
the little
right.
bit that handles the nuclear,
Right, that ought to go under
plutonium
defense.
and so forth goes under defense, but we abolish the rest of it. Health and Human Services.
There is room for some public health activities to prevent contagion, such a thing as, for example.
So you'd keep the National Institutes of Health, say, and the Center for Disease Control down in
not the
Atlanta?
National Institute.
Oh, no?
No, those are mostly a research agency. No, that's a question of whether the government should be involved in financing research.
And the answer is no.
Well, that's a very complicated issue, and it's not an easy answer with respect to that.
We'll eliminate half of the Department of Health and Human
something
Services?
like that.
Okay, 1/2. There we go. Housing and Urban Development?
Out.
Oh, didn't even pause over that one. Department of the Interior?
Oh, well, but housing and urban development has done an enormous amount of harm. My God. If you think of the way in which they've destroyed parts of cities under the rubric of eliminating slums.
Jack Kemp.
You know, you remember Martin Anderson wrote a book on the federal bulldozer describing the effect of the urban development. There have been many more dwelling units torn down in the name of public housing than have been built.
Jack Kemp has proposed selling to the current inhabitants of public housing their unit, their townhouse, their apartment, for $1 a piece, and just shifting the ownership to the people who live in it.
If you got rid of the Department of Housing and Urban Development, it would be worth doing that.
All right, done. That's gone. Department of the Interior, your beloved National Park Service.
Well, given the problem there is, you first have to sell off all the land that the government owns. But that's what you should do.
But it could be done pretty quickly.
It could be done. You should do that. There's no reason for government to own. The government now owns something like 1/3 of all the land in the country.
And that's too much. Should go down to 0.
Should go down to, well, not entirely 0. They ought to own the land on which government buildings are.
Okay, terrific. Department of Justice.
Oh, yes.
Keep that one.
Keep that one.
Labor.
No.
Gone. State.
Keep.
Keep it. Transportation.
Gone.
Gone.
It goes on for about another minute 30 of just cutting. And again, if you notice, there are some places that we could use government programs. It's not saying that we need to cut everything, but it's too big. It's too bloated. Bring it back down. allow a lot of people to figure things out. There's a lot of people and businesses that can be created to sit there and help a lot of these things take place. And you could privatize a lot of it. And I know a lot of these people go, well, look what happened in Texas with the electricity when it was privatized. Nobody's saying things are going to be perfect under a privatized sector. Like, it was terrible what happened in Texas when things went down. And maybe somebody in Texas that lives there right now that watches the show could probably shine more light on it better than me, because I can't recall that many years ago. But, things happened. Things happened, and it was terrible. But also, those private businesses learn from those things, and things can be done a little bit better. I mean, I'll give you a case in point of an example of private doing better in the state of California. So it is a big deal in California, especially Southern California, when you shut down a freeway. If you shut down a freeway, all hell breaks loose. And there's a thing called Carmageddon that we had a while ago, where they needed to demolish some bridges that went over some freeways, and to do so, they had to sit there and shut down the freeway. So they put out like a public service announcement of like, there's going to be Carmageddon, take off work, don't show up, it's going to be terrible. So what they did was they hired a private company, not a government company, a private company, to tear down these overpasses. And they said, look, if you could do it in a certain amount of time, like basically if you can go fast and get it done early, we'll give you a bonus. We'll actually pay you more money. These people, this private company, like, exceeded expectations. It was, I'm probably wrong on this. I want to say they destroyed the whole thing. That was supposed to take like days until like, I think it was like 24, 48 hours or something like that. It was some bonkers thing. I'm probably butchering it, but they did it fast. That's what I'm saying. And they got a bonus. Now, I see Caltrans, which is, I believe, a government agency, if I'm wrong. They're never working. Anybody in Southern California ever actually see Caltrans working? I see a bunch of construction, but nobody's ever out there doing anything. Maybe they work at night. I don't know. But anyways, enough complaining about that. Sorry, Brad, but if you fail 7 audits, the government or the federal government will shut your business down and basically take your assets. There you go. Thank you, Jeff. Now, what's nice about this, if we can connect it to Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy's Doge, you fail 7 consecutive audits, well, I guess the government's going to shut the government down. Full circle. It's a full circle. If you're enjoying what you're listening to, hit that like button, folks. We have a lot of fun here. A lot of fun. If you can't tell, your host is having a good time.